Once again, something ill-boding is happening in Russia, where houses are burning and bridges crumbling. Today we will talk about the recent explosion on the Crimean Bridge and its mysterious circumstances, as well as Russia's abrupt termination of the grain agreement. In the midnight gloom of July 17, the occupiers announced that something extraordinary happened on the Crimean Bridge, which connects Russia with the occupied Crimea Peninsula, said the head of the Russian Occupation Administration of Crimea, Sergei Aksyonov. Consequently, an immense, snaking traffic jam emerged from the Russian side as the bridge's traffic was abruptly halted. Judging by the statements of the Russian internet media, the incident took place around the 145th support from the side of the Krasnodar territory of Russia. It is already known about the destruction or significant damage to at least one span of the Crimean Bridge and possibly significant damage to another span. The Russian Ministry of Transport assured that the supports of the bridge are not destroyed, and instead it is supposedly the road surface on the span of the bridge that is damaged. Russian occupiers called on civilians to refrain from crossing the bridge and to travel to Crimea through other temporary occupied territories of Ukraine, that is, through Mariupol, Melitopol and Henichensky, captured by the Russians. And this is indeed so interesting because Russian leadership is specifically calling on their citizens to drive through the frontline territories saturated with a large number of armed people who will bear no responsibility for any potential incidents that will accidentally be associated with friendly fires or sheer looting. So the kamikaze route is ready, dear tourists. It will be thrilling, I'm sure. Rumors are swirling that the bridge might have been targeted twice using marine drones, given the damage pattern. Judging by the nature of the damage, this version is the most probable. It's worth recalling the words of the head of the Guru, Budanov. The Crimean Bridge is an excessive structure, he said. By the way, guys, coincidentally, I made a video about our mysterious chief spy yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, it's worth watching. I will leave a link in the description below. I don't know who was behind this operation, or maybe I do know, but I cannot say. But I want to remind you that a strike on the Crimean Bridge is a legitimate strike on a military object because heavy Russian military equipment, personnel, ammunition and food supply to the Russian army that kills Ukrainians was transported through the Crimean Bridge to the occupied Crimea every day. But Russia also uses this bridge for civilian transportation, so I think Russians who wanted to vacation in Crimea should remember that they are driving on a military object that is legitimately military target in the occupied territories of a foreign country, and therefore they can also be hit as a result of the occupation. But let's get back to the bridge and what happened. If you look at the damage that is on the bridge, there are no signs of a missile strike. Therefore, the explosion did not occur on the surface or from above, as it would be in the case of missile strike. If viewed from a physical standpoint, the explosion happened underneath the bridge. Therefore, the version that the strike was delivered by underwater drones is likely. These are fast drones and they are similar to a quad bike somewhere, and they are quite difficult to spot and destroy. Well, I can say that this attack is significantly different from the previous one last year, where it was a long, large-scale, carefully planned operation. Now, if the strike was indeed delivered by underwater drones, it can be considered quite simple technology, and with the presence of such drones in large numbers, the Russians in occupied Crimea can forget about good night's sleep. Of course, Putin, in his evening online meeting with officials, ordered to strengthen the defense and protection of the Crimean Bridge, because how it is already the second attack in the end. But I think to reassure him that it will not be the last one until Russian occupation troops and authorities do not leave Crimea and return it to Ukraine, or Ukraine will reclaim it. Well, you understood me. So, what does the bridge attack mean in a military context? The Kerch Bridge is a critical lifeline for Russia, transporting necessities to Crimea and the southern theater of military operations. In case of its critical damage, supplies are complicated and military cargoes will be forced to wait for a long time for a ferry crossing, or they will have to travel through the temporary occupied territories and expose themselves to the danger of fire damage from our defense forces. Interestingly, the bridge's attack coincided with the uncertainty looming over the continuation of the grain agreement and the commanders of Azov returning to Ukraine. This brings us to another crucial development: Russia's formal withdrawal from the grain agreement. This effectively suspends the Black Sea corridor that facilitated the export of Ukrainian agricultural products to Asia and Africa's neediest countries. Peskov said that the grain agreement will be renewed when the Russian part of the agreement is fulfilled. The main argument of the Russian Federation against the continuation of the agreement has always been the alleged unwillingness of other parties to take into account its interest, which consists in the possibility of exporting grain to world markets and especially mineral fertilizers. In general, no agreements have anything to do with the grain agreement itself, so these can be interpreted as direct blackmail of all parties, including not only Ukraine but also Turkey and UN. What reaction this sparks from China, who advocated for the continuation of the agreement due to its vested interest, remains to be seen. In short, the main thing about this termination of the agreement is that Russia, in connection with the withdrawal from the agreement, also revokes its security guarantees in the northwestern waters of the Black Sea. Translated into normal language, this means that the aggressor country can at any moment strike at civilian vessels heading to Ukrainian Black Sea ports or going in the opposite direction. As of today, no ships have remained in Ukrainian ports. The last of them left the port of Odessa yesterday. Guys, if you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to support the channel and help us grow, you can always do so through my Patreon or buy me a coffee, which I have shared in the description below. In a recent article by The Times titled "What to Know About Ukraine's Grain Deal and Its Effect on Global Food Supply," the ripple effects of the grain agreement's termination are highlighted. The Times reports that the Black Sea Grain Initiative was designed to allow Ukraine to export grain, with over half of the food going to developing countries. The suspension of this initiative by Russia could potentially exacerbate the global food crisis and push up grain prices. Many nations are already grappling with high local food prices, which are contributing to increased levels of hunger. Ukraine and Russia each signed agreements in July 2022 to reopen blocked Ukrainian Black Sea ports and facilitate the movement of Russian produce amid Western sanctions. Both countries are major providers of affordable foodstuffs like wheat, barley, sunflower oil, and corn, on which Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia are heavily reliant. Russia claimed that sanctions on the Russian agricultural bank and shipping and insurance restrictions have hampered its agricultural export. Russia also complained about unfulfilled commitment to pipe its ammonia, a key fertilizer component, to a Ukrainian port for export under the deal. The end of the deal could potentially affect the 79 countries and 349 million people who depend on the grain deal. Food may become less accessible and price might increase, impacting household affordability. Ukraine's economy is heavily reliant on agriculture, and prior to the war, 75% of its grain exports went through the Black Sea. Now, it is considering land or river routes through Europe, despite these being able to handle lower quantities compared to the sea shipment and causing disconnect in neighboring countries. Other factors affecting food supply globally include fallout from the pandemic, conflicts, economic crisis, drought, and other climate factors. So what conclusion can we draw from this article? For Ukraine, the termination of this grain deal could have serious impacts on our economy, as it could reduce our export capacity and revenue. This is especially crucial as 75% of Ukraine's grain export pre-war went through the Black Sea. While Ukraine may find alternative routes to export its grain, these alternatives can handle fewer amount compared to sea shipments and may cause tension with neighboring countries. For the world, the termination of the grain deal could worsen the global food crisis and increase grain prices, especially for developing nations that are already grappling with high local food prices. Countries reliant on imported food might see their costs rise if they have to find suppliers that are farther away, compounding costs for countries whose currencies have weakened and debt levels grows due to paying for food shipments in dollars. That's it for today, guys. See you in my next videos, and Slava Ukraini!